All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the absolute fundamental building blocks of modern electronics. If you've ever listened to music on a set of speakers, relied on medical equipment, or tuned a radio, you have directly benefited from the magic of this tiny little component. We are, of course, talking about the operational amplifier, or op-amp. Let's jump right in and trace this fascinating journey from high-level theory all the way down to the bare metal silicon that makes it tick. So you really gotta ask yourself at the start here, what actually powers the analog world around us? How do everyday electronic devices, from a simple MP3 player adjusting the volume for your headphones, all the way up to complex radar systems, manage to perfectly modulate and manipulate signals? Well, the answer almost always traces back to the op-amp. It's basically the engine that adds, subtracts, scales, and filters the analog information we rely on every single day. Looking at the formal definition, an operational amplifier is a high-gain component with differential inputs, a feedback loop, and typically a single output used to modulate or amplify signals. But what's really wild about this is its history. When it was first developed back in 1941, an op-amp wasn't some tiny chip. No, it was a bulky, power-hungry beast made up of vacuum tubes that needed hundreds of volts just to turn on. Today, thanks to massive leaps in semiconductor tech, they're packaged into incredibly tiny, inexpensive, integrated circuits running on just a few volts. A perfect example is the legendary LM741, which we'll be using as our guide today. Here is our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start with the magic black box, then cover the golden rules, practical circuit design, inside the LM741, and finally, real-world imperfections. Okay, Section 1, the magic black box. Let's look at how we symbolize this component on paper. Whenever you look at a circuit schematic, you are going to see this standard triangle. It brilliantly illustrates the op-amp in its simplest symbolic form. Notice those two vital inputs on the left. We have the non-inverting input, which is marked with a plus sign, and the inverting input marked with a minus sign. The signals enter right there, the op-amp does its invisible math inside the triangle, and the result comes shooting out of that single output line on the right. Moving on to Section 2, the golden rules. We have to understand these constraints before we can actually design anything. There are two primary rules that govern an ideal op-amp, and they are absolutely crucial. Rule number 1, the inputs draw absolutely no current. Ideally, the input impedance is infinite. It literally just looks at the voltage without consuming any of the signal's current. Rule number 2, the voltage of one input always equals that of the other input. Now, I know that sounds a little counterintuitive at first, but the key takeaway is this. If the input voltages are different, the op-amp's output is going to forcefully swing. It uses its massive internal gain and a feedback loop to do whatever it takes to force the voltage difference between those two input pins to exactly 0. Section 3, practical circuit design. Let's see how we actually use resistors to program the op-amp. Let's look at a classic setup straight from a Texas Instruments data sheet. This is the non-inverting amplifier. Here, the incoming signal is fed directly into the positive non-inverting terminal. We then use a feedback loop from the output back to the negative terminal. By using two equal 4.7 k ohm resistors, one is the feedback resistor and one tied to ground, we set our gain. The formula here is simply 1 plus the ratio of the two resistors. So 1 plus 4.7K over 4.7K equals exactly 2. We've literally just programmed the silicon chip to exactly double our voltage. And to prove it, check out this oscilloscope capture of that exact circuit in action. The blue wave on top is our 1.06 volts peak-to-peak input. The red wave on the bottom is the output. Notice how it perfectly mirrors the shape, but is stretched vertically to 1.94 volts. It almost perfectly doubled. Now, you might be wondering about that tiny discrepancy in the math. Well, that's just a natural 5% tolerance of the physical resistors we used. Now, let's contrast that with another foundational setup, the inverting amplifier. Do you see the difference here? The positive terminal is now grounded. Our input voltage is instead fed into the negative terminal through an input resistor. Because of our golden rule, you know that the op-amp forces the inputs to match, the negative terminal is forced to act as a virtual ground. The result of this, the output is not only scaled by the resistors, but it's physically flipped upside down or inverted relative to the input. So just to quickly summarize the math for these two primary configurations, a non-inverting setup gives you a gain of 1 plus the resistor ratio, and the signal stays upright. An inverting setup gives you a gain of exactly the negative resistor ratio, which flips the signal. And here's where it gets really interesting. By adding multiple input resistors to that same virtual ground in the inverting setup, we can create what's called a summing circuit. This physically adds multiple audio or voltage signals together. Just by swapping a few cheap resistors, you can build amplifiers, summing circuits, or active filters. It's an incredibly elegant design guide for the analog world. Section 4. Inside the classic LM741. It's time to lift the hood and look at the bare metal. So it's super easy to just draw a triangle on a piece of paper and call it a day. But what is actually happening when you slice open that little plastic microchip? What exactly is sitting on that microscopic silicon die to provide this massive voltage gain and input protection? Okay, I know, this looks instantly overwhelming. This is the internal bipolar junction transistor, or BJT, circuitry of a typical op-amp like the LM741. It genuinely looks like a maze of transistors and resistors, but seriously, don't panic. If we break it down, it's actually just 3 logical, beautifully designed blocks working seamlessly together. Let's walk through those 3 critical stages from left to right. First, the green block on the left is the differential input stage. Engineers often call this a long tail pair. This is what provides that high input impedance, so we don't draw current, and it calculates the difference between our plus and minus pins. Second, that blue block in the middle is the voltage gain stage. This is typically a common emitter amplifier, and it's what provides that massive amplification power. Finally, the red block on the right is the output drive stage. It's a push-pull circuit designed to provide the actual physical current needed to drive whatever load we connect to the output. Section 5, Real-World Imperfections. Because ideal op-amps don't actually exist in nature, let's look at some of the quirks. Take a close look at this waveform. Notice that little dead zone where the signal flatlines briefly right as it crosses the zero axis? That is known as crossover distortion. It's actually an inherent flaw in that push-pull output stage we just talked about. You see, those output transistors need about 0.7 volts just to wake up and start conducting. So when the signal transitions from the pushing transistor to the pulling transistor, there's a brief moment where neither one is awake, which causes this little flat line. Another slightly annoying reality of the physical world is input offset voltage. In a perfect theoretical world, if both input pins are at exactly 0 volts, the output should be exactly 0. But in reality, tiny manufacturing mismatches inside the transistors create a slight DC difference. To fix this, the LM741 provides offset null connections on pins 1 and 5. Engineers can connect a manual potentiometer to these pins and literally tune out that offset by hand until the output balances perfectly to 0. And finally, we have to talk about the danger of oscillation. Because the op-amp has such massive internal gain, any slight delay in the feedback loop at high frequencies can actually turn negative feedback into positive feedback. That will instantly turn your amplifier into a wild, uncontrollable oscillator. To prevent this, designers bake a tiny 30 picofarad compensation capacitor right into the silicon. It's an absolutely brilliant design feature that intentionally drops the gain at high frequencies to maintain stability. Yes, it limits the overall speed of the 741, but it makes it incredibly reliable. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. We've traveled all the way from the pristine, ideal math of the magic black box right down into the gritty silicon realities of offset nulls and crossover distortion. The LM741 is absolutely a 1960s classic that taught the world analog design, but its bandwidth and speed limits are very real today. So I'll leave you with this to think about. As our devices get faster and operate on lower and lower voltages, how will modern semiconductor advancements push past these legacy limits to design the next generation of analog chips? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep questioning the circuits around you.